Welcome in to SportsSource.tv. This is our overtime segment. We do it each week. I'm John Pennington. I never introduced myself.
Hey.
I'm John Pennington. How you doing? This is Sterling Hinton. That is Will Overstreet. Right there is David Ligon, and down there is Daniel Hood. And whenever these guys are on the set together, I know what it is in my brain. When it's just one of you and the other one's not here that week, I have no problem. But for some reason, when I see the two of you, I always want to say Daniel is David and David is Daniel. The only two names. Thank goodness there's no Dino or Dirk or anybody else on this show. I had trouble with the D's. Anyway, these guys will be here to answer some of the questions that you send in via Twitter or anything else they want to cover over from the show. But Blue Smoke Cigar is the group that brings you this segment every week. They do a terrific job in terms of providing you with a fun place to relax, to enjoy a fine cigar. They've got a terrific humidor down there, but leather seating, TVs, it's the place to go. Golf simulators. Weather's getting cold. You can't really go out and golf as much. Go to their golf simulator and pound away on it. Or they got card tables as well. Lockers where you can keep your booze. So cool stuff. And cigars. I guess if you want to keep cigars there, you can too, but you can keep your scotch or your booze there. Not that I would ever do that. All right.
No.
Want to ask, for the one I got more texts about and tweets and emails about was the Antone Davis thing. A lot of people liked Antone Davis. I think that the idea that he was bullied, that he was cursed, and it was a hostile work environment based on Butch Jones, I think that caught some people off guard because Antone Davis, not a small man. Butch Jones, not a large man. But I guess when one guy's got more power than you do in your job, the size doesn't really matter. Sterling, I'm going to put it to you, man, and put you in it's a tough spot for you because, one, you work over there. You know Butch Jones well. You played with Antone Davis. You know him well.
Absolutely.
What's happening here?
Well, I think what happened is a situation where you got two guys wanting the best for our Big Orange family. You know, Antone is you know, he's a very impressive looking man. You know, they always tell him, you know, he's one of the biggest gentlemen off the field and probably the biggest, meanest lineman you have on the field. You know, he definitely can turn it on and off, but for the most part, he's just a gentleman type guy. And so, you know, and Coach Jones has a fiery spirit. And so sometimes that, I guess, communication thing could come to as an altercation in Antone's situation. And be that, you know, Coach Jones be the person that he is, somebody not coming back at him could have been an altercation in his eyes. So you never know what happened, but you better believe it was some situations where they both wanted the best. Both wanted the best.
You know, I don't know. I don't have any inside knowledge of what happened or didn't occur, but you know, I know my interactions with Antone. You know, he's a good guy, stand-up guy. What I always saw was he worked hard at his job. You know, I had received a text for him asking me to do something for somebody. You know, a couple weeks ago. He was always proactive in reaching out. I'm sure to others as well, of trying to assist the VFL program. So he always did a good job. I enjoyed the events. You know, obviously I'm sure that was a team effort, but he led the charge in what they did for us. Tremendous program. I thought he did a very good job. I don't know Butch Jones. I see what I see on TV. And football's different than the normal professional world. Right. You know, whether it's as a player on the field or coaches' interactions with each other, it is a emotionally charged environment. So I'm no doubt from what I've seen out of Butch Jones and knowing what goes on inside a football complex and inside of a program, there were probably passionate, heated conversations. But you know, I think to a degree, the head football coach has to understand there's a different way in dealing with a professional employee who is a grown man than what you're going to do with an 18 to 22-year-old. So I'm sure there may have been fault on both sides. I don't know. That's just my take on it.
And you know, I got to spend a lot of time with Antone as he's working in his VFL program. Of course, being able to play there, and of course now coming back. And again, you know, the photo he keeps up in his office is one of the times that he's pancaking Reggie White. So when you talk about the ability, you talk about the guy's mass and everything else, the ability to do anything he wants to. And so, you know, I respect the class and you know, the passion that he took to that VFL position, because you can't go in a workplace and just because I'm bigger than you, I'm going to beat you up. We got to meet on like minds. We got to compare ideas and things like that. And I think he took it to that. And being someone that's got, you know, one of Coach Jones' last things out again, I can see where that side of it is there as well. But again, it's just a tough environment. You got tough times, and when it comes down to it, sometimes it's, I always question, what made it all right in the first place. Where did it start before, and how did it get to this point that it gets like that? So I'd be curious to hear more.
Just got this tweet. We have been talking injuries. That's what they did. We've been talking injuries for 5 years now. Actually, just the last 2. So maybe someone can find a solution for the issue instead of excuses. Did we offer excuses for the injuries? I think we tried to figure out how you get so many injuries. And if this guy just spun that around and didn't write it the way he wanted to, and he meant that we were making excuses with the injuries, I don't think we were doing that either.
No, I mean, yeah, we didn't predict you're about to get beat by Missouri by a lot of points because of injuries. I mean,
that's right.
I mean, we don't think you have a very good team right now. We don't think it's just injuries. We've questioned the coaching staff in several different ways, who they put out on the field, formation sets, what they do, how they don't really take their team and try to adjust their offense and defenses to the players they have on the field.
Game day decision
Game day
making.
decisions. I mean, all those are at fault for why you're at where you're at, just as much as anything else. So injuries has to be a part of that. It always is. If you don't have your best players to go to and put in the game at times, that hurts you. But that also can be that you're having some of those injuries based on you don't get enough depth, you don't get enough rotation in certain games, and you try to play too many guys for too long.
And also, I'm in a different spot. The way I view it is last year, I thought it was okay to say, yes, you had more injuries than any other team in the country, statistically speaking. This Phil Steele runs these numbers every year. This isn't something we've done here. This is a national magazine. Tennessee had more injuries than anybody else. They lost 52 starts to injury last year. And people always say, well, Florida had injuries. Yeah, they had 38 starts lost to injury. So 52, 38 was the second most in the league. That was last year, though. You're now in 2 years. I didn't give you a complete pass of it last year. You should have beaten Vanderbilt, injuries or not. You weren't beat up in the first half when you were right there with them. It was the second half where you tanked. But now you're in the second year. It's harder for me to say, oh, yes, it's the injuries again. I'm not going to give as much, even it may be just as much a reason, but I'm not going to talk it as much because it's 2 years in a row, is the way I look at it.
And I think, what's magnified now is when you're trying to build a program back, when you're trying to bring it back from where the Derek Dooley age was, you've got, usually a generally higher attrition rate from the team, so guys that are leaving the program. And eventually that's got to come back down a little bit. You got to keep some more of those guys there to keep them happy because, how great would it have been to have Sharon Jones, last night. That way we could keep the red shirt and that type of stuff. And so how can you keep that guy happy, to where you can get him? Or, backup running backs. Or, Vic Wharton's tearing it up at Cal right now. Yeah. How do you keep some of those guys happy?
There are some that they didn't, from what I understand, the people I've talked to, they don't do a great job of de-recruiting. You recruit everybody and you tell them you're the greatest in the world, please sign with us, and then you come to town. And there's a way to de-recruit somebody that isn't just, don't ever talk to me again. And I'm not saying that's what Jones did, but I don't know how great they were at de-recruiting some of these guys. At the same time, was Nick Saban at fault because last year he had 3 5-star quarterbacks transfer in the middle of the year? No, guys want to play. So that's part of it. So, but I think you're right, whether it's the guys that maybe they could have done more to keep, maybe it's the guys they should have seen from the beginning, this probably won't work out with this cat, or maybe it's just the guys who are going to go on their own. That attrition has hurt the program. That's hurt the depth. That's exposed some fissures in the recruiting that you've done. I don't think there's any question. Somebody says Butch Jones never should have put Garantano back in after he was taken out. For those 3 plays, you put him back in, you put him in danger, he was too hurt. He said after the game that if it had been an emergency, Garantano could have gone in and played. Okay. Shouldn't have put him in after taking him out for 3 games.
As a player, you always want to play, and you always want to see if you can perform. And so I'm quite sure Jared and I know him personally. He probably said, Coach, I can go out and go. And then they saw some things that probably would limit him or make his injury even worse for the next week. So that's probably why they put him out. But a player always wants to play.
I would be quick to point out on this show, I'd be quick to point out if it was a RG3 situation and a guy can't protect himself. I didn't see that. I saw a guy with a bum ankle. I didn't think he was standing out there endangering his career.
Yeah. Well,
personally,
if the doctor's clear, the player says he wants to go back out there and he thinks your best chance to win, you put him back out there. Yeah. And then you look at him and say, can we get enough out of what he is now today to be able to win this game, or does he not give us the best shot? If he doesn't, then you pull him back out and you put the guy back in. I think it's exactly what they did. I don't think you can fault this decision. Listen, there are plenty of things to find fault with.
Yes.
finding every little thing and saying, well, that's a bad decision is not accurate either. And I think in this case, that's exactly what we have.
And you know what's funny about this case? Maybe it was the right decision. We won. Oh, we forgot about that.
Well,
Well,
you get guys like Gene Chizik who are barking loud, and you know, I've said this all year about Gene Chizik. I don't care if it's a Tennessee game, an Alabama game, a Kentucky game he's commenting on. The only thing he's qualified to say is, if you want to win, buy a really good quarterback. That's all I want to hear out of Gene Chizik. I don't want to hear anything else out of Gene Chizik other than, if it were me, I'd buy me a quarterback, because he's not qualified to do anything of the rest of that stuff. And I thought that him going on and on about it and saying, well, they could have run Wildcat there. I'm sitting there in the second half thinking, I wonder if old Chizik would have just run the Wildcat for the entire second half here. You know, anyway.
But the thing I add too is I can remember my freshman year kind of having one of those moments as a player. You got to know yourself better than anyone else, because your coaches are going to be in the game. They're going to be thinking about a lot of different stuff, X's and O's, Y's. They're not going to be able to always make those great decisions. I can remember when we got just destroyed by Ole Miss. Dexter McCluster went off for whatever, how many yards he had that day. He's probably still running. But there's a linebacker that was trying to fight through injury and play through injuries in that game. And Coach Kiffin, you know, we come in on Sunday or Monday meetings, hey, you just lost yourself a lot of money in the NFL, because now that's on film. That's what your NFL scouts. You know, you've got to be able to make that decision. Hey, I'm not performing right. I got to be able to go out and let someone else go in. I'm
going to say this is, we're online, so I'll say this. I could never even come close to this on television. But just a little tidbit off that thing, because I've always laughed at that. There's a story about that game. Talked to somebody at the Sentinel at the time, and they were joking that after that game where McCluster just went nuts, they were joking in Sentinel that the headline should be, well, you know what word goes with cluster? Cluster bank. They're McCluster. That's pretty funny. If I offended you, I apologize.
We wouldn't say that name in the program for like the next 3 years, because
yeah, it was a heck of a day. All right. Someone wonders if the field, because you had problems with the Inland Stadium's turf a couple of years ago, I don't think the field is part of the injury problem.
No, the field's in good shape now. They got that a couple years ago when you saw clumps of grass being picked up like that.
Pieces of sod.
Yeah. Then that was a bad problem. It's not happening like that right now.
That problem's eradicated.
Okay. Somebody, I said, look, I don't care what. We're now in a new day. And Bob Hodge, I think you said your dad wouldn't be chirping. But I said, look, I don't know when football changed to where the first thought out of every commentator's mouth is, what will this player's parents think? And I said, I don't care. And somebody said, well, clearly you're not a parent because parents care about their children. I get that. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean the parents get to weigh in on every football decision. I mean, do we keep following that along? I know that now there are parents who go with their children on job interviews. If I were doing the hiring, you wouldn't get past the door.
I'd laugh and
but
say goodbye.
That's actually happening now. Look it up in Forbes magazine if you don't buy it. But if you take that to its logical conclusion, then once they're out of the college, they're going to go into the pros and say, now look, I have a comment to make here, Mr. Malarkey. I don't like the way you're using Junior. I mean, and then when they're on television, they go to CBS. Yeah. All right. So am I wrong on this whole? I don't care what parents say. It's a bigger issue now than it's ever been.
No, it's a big issue. The biggest thing you can tell a parent is if your kid has the limelight or is going to get on the stage, get off of this stuff. Don't be speaking about, talk about your family photos and all this other stuff, but honestly, you're only going to find yourself in a bad spot when you start talking like this, and you're going to get a bunch of idiots following you. And who do you want to be with around you like that? As a parent, you could care about your kid, talk to them, and talk privately, but it doesn't do you any good to be a vocal parent out there on Twitter.
And a coach doesn't care what a parent thinks about the game decision of playing time, or they're not doing enough of this or that. I think that myself as a parent, thinking of my children, the number one thing I'm thinking about is their safety, particularly with a game that is violent like football. That's what. And if you saw something that you thought, in your honest opinion, endangered your kid, speak up. And that's fine.
And for example, the Kendrick family has, from what I understand, they've met with Butch Jones, they've met with the training staff, they've met with John Curry. Whether or not they were happy with what they heard, I don't know. But that's absolutely legitimate. Absolutely.
Yeah,
What I'm talking about is
playing time.
it's
Talk to
now
your
be-
kid privately about
It's
it.
now part of the story. Is why
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
we
no, that's-
cover football. I'm not going to worry. It's not t-ball. I don't care that some. Well, his dad's mad. He wanted to move to tight end. Screw his dad.
Well,
So
doesn't
you got
matter.
85 dads out there who all want somebody playing. I want my son playing more. I want him at this position. I want you to highlight him. You can't please all of them.
And that's exactly how something like the NFL can become overexposed and how the NCAA can be overexposed. We don't care about these little side stories all the time, every time.
Yeah.
Forget it. I mean, just see what's on the field, have a product, and go do that. But the mom, the dad, the uncle, the sister, who cares?
Well, it's
I mean,
the-
that's exactly right.
The
It's-
Lonzo Ball stuff.
Yeah.
ESPN's
Yeah.
always talking about who has a press conference after his kid loses a game. Well, better question is, what idiot puts it on television and tweets about it? That's you, ESPN. You're the ones covering it.
Yeah.
You know. Daniel, you got anything to weigh in here?
I just, to me, I always think back to, the South Carolina basketball coach. When they were making the NCAA tournament run, he says, kids hadn't changed. It's us as adults that have changed and that type of stuff. And so I always go back to, where do these parents get this type of stuff from? And so that's where it's like, how do we get past, and then how do we correct it? How do we get away from it? Because, I've worked for many coaches before that, a parent says, well, my kid needs to be playing more. He did really good at this camp. He said, all right, well, cool, great. Let's come in here and watch film. Okay, number one, can you show me what an over defense is? Can you draw it up on the board? Okay, no, okay. We'll scratch that. Okay, show me what a three technique. Oh, you can't do that either. Okay, so where does this come from? And so it's just, I'm always mind blown about those type of scenarios of how we're even getting to this point. And of course, then it goes back to, it's their parents that have, somehow that, made this all right, that it's all right to take your parents on a job interview, which,
I would be embarrassed to hell to do that. There's
gotta-
no way. Mommy, will you go to the job interview with me?
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking like,
Do you want the
Drop me
pudding
off.
or the apple?
I spend more time in Neyland Stadium than I think I do with my dad, each year, and it's mind blowing to me that there's situations that exist. But in football, we always had the thing, and of course now losing it as I'm thinking about it.
Sorry.
TV always.
One too many hits to the head, Daniel.
Yeah, I know.
CTE.
What am I thinking? No, it's just what you allow, you encourage. What we always used to say. So when you go to those scenarios, you've allowed it for so long. Now it's basically being encouraged. So at some points you got to draw the line in the sand and cut it off.
Well, the problem is now everybody, and I don't have a problem with Will McBride's mother and what she said. That's fine. But the problem is now everyone is fighting. It's 24 hours a day, and there's 400. I mean, when I started this, there was a TV show. Now there's like 5. There's 15 radio stations in town doing 24 hours a day of radio. Everyone's looking for something. All the national websites, there's 450 websites covering Tennessee, and they're all looking for anything to cover. So that, therefore, well, that's why somebody was following the Twitter feed of their third-string quarterback's mother. My God, that's insane.
And she
That's
was probably
insane.
putting something out there for her circle, her community, her circle of friends to converse with, not expecting that it's going to be drawn out.
We got something to write
Like,
about.
yeah,
and
she's-
SEC Network
let's
can
do
talk
it.
about
Well,
it.
now she needs to know, hey, you can't be posting
Yep.
anymore.
Well, see, that's what I was saying. If these parents want to really show that they care about their children, do it in private. Whatever happens to the
off.
effectiveness of one-on-one communication will always be superior to social media. Always. For effectiveness. Now, if you want to be famous, that's another story.
Yeah, and this kind of thing is the kind of thing. If let's say I was a coach, and I'd been out of football for a long time, and I'd been coaching in the NFL, and somebody wanted me to come back and coach college football, this is the kind of thing that would convince me to do it. Getting to deal with this kind of thing.
But I think
I'm just talking hypothetical
It again
people
goes
here.
back to, and I think it's us as fans and everything else. At some point, we just got to say, you know what? We're not going to even talk about it. We're not even going to give it the light of day. Let's talk about something that matters.
Well, that ain't gonna happen, Dave.
No, I know it won't.
That ship has sailed.
That's
If
wishful
somebody
thinking.
thinks they can get a click because they wrote that Jalen Hurts' dad said something or Riley Ferguson's dad said something,
Yeah.
it will become a story. And once it becomes a story, we'll talk about, here's this story. What did this guy say this for? And other people will be going, aha, look at this. Proof that all is wrong with the world. All right, very quickly. Jared Garantano, does his injury provide John Curry cover to keep Jones till the end of the season? I think it's pretty clear he's just going to do what he wants to do, and he doesn't need cover if he wants it. I don't think so.
I
Cover's
think,
not an issue.
I think rightfully so, though, too. The more I thought about it and the more I remembered, that last game with Coach Dooley gone, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I can't imagine if we had to play 4 games in that scenario, or of course in this scenario 3 games, just how bad it would have been. And I think Curry, the longer you can push that off, you know, keep saying the same old things, your operating statement, your you know, support the players and that type of stuff. Keep doing it.
I don't see any point in it at this moment. I mean, not making a change. I've already said I would have made the change because I think it's toxic I think you're getting more and more of these stories. I think that will continue. However, when it comes to just football, and if I'm John Curry and I'm not worried about that stuff hovering over the program, if I'm just worried about football, this really doesn't matter when you make this move. I think all of us know he's going to make this move. If you make a good hire, no one's going to remember that, well, he took too long to get rid. Nobody's going to care if he walks out of here with a name that everybody wants. And if he walks out of there, if he blows up Jones tomorrow and hires an interim, and you wind up hiring Joe Schmidlap from Arkansas Tech, nobody's going to be satisfied with, well, at least he got rid of Jones early. I just don't see, this is one to get mad about just for the sake of getting mad about.
And we've talked about timing, you know, whether you do it early or later. You know, you provided examples that it can blow up either way. You know, I mean, I don't think that there's a big name out there that everybody wants that if we got to go right now or we'll wait until the end of the season, it's gonna screw you over. Because whoever it is going to be sought after by others.
Yes.
And if they get the first offer, they're going to say, well, let's see what else comes along.
Exactly.
And we'll play the offers against Caesar because they're out to get the most money.
Somebody told me this week, said, well, you've waited now. Now Florida's going to get Dan Mullen. Whether they do or not, his old AD from Mississippi State is there now, but Florida had the chance to go get Dan Mullen twice and didn't with the last AD. But here's the thing. Even if you had fired Butch Jones in September, like LSU did last year, do you think you really would have gone to Dan Mullen and his agent, Jimmy Sexton, and Sexton would have gone, give me that paper, sign it, boy, sign it now? No, he'd have said, hold off.
Yeah, because
there are other schools out there, baby. We can play them against each other.
Yeah.
And that's insane. Like they'd have just been saying, give it to me, please, let me sign it.
I just want to wear those colors.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think one of the interesting things, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and you can tell me if I'm crazy.
You're
which
crazy.
may be true. Maybe true. But you know, if I'm a prominent head coach and I'm about to take that next step, and I'm looking between Florida and Tennessee, I think at this point I would almost prefer Tennessee just because you look at how things ended with Florida's coach, with the upper administration being against the coach. Now you look at a team that got blown out, they've quit, and they're dysfunctional. And you got so much stuff that it just seems like there's more and more issues that are piling up. When you look at Tennessee, it's like, okay, well, I need to manage my depth better. I need to get fans back involved, and it's a lot less fires to put out, I think, going in.
Well, what I've heard, and which is incredible, I've got a couple of friends who are some high and upcoming coaches and doing real well right now in other conferences. And the word amongst some of those coaches are, I don't even want an SEC job.
Too crazy.
I've heard that from these people's mouths. You know, the SEC is the perennial conference in football, but because of the passion of our fans, which can sometimes, you know, be pressure, you know, and you look at the history of a couple of schools over the past 10 years, you know, and then other schools are paying the same amount of money now and given a different situation, you know, I've heard it from a couple of up-and-coming coaches that say that'll be my last choice to go to the SEC. And that
Look at a guy like Gary Patterson at TCU, who has a statue of himself in front of the stadium. He had 2 losing seasons when they went to the Big 12. Did anybody hear about Gary Patterson on the hot seat?
No.
If he'd had the same thing here, his first 2 years, yeah, you'd have had people screaming, year 3, you better get it done. And I think Chris Peterson was the same way. He stayed at Boise for a long time, then he went to Washington. That's not exactly the highest pressure job in the country. I think you're right. I think there are a lot of people that are leery of the SEC right now. Now the money helps, and of course you can win a championship. But I'm sure there are some guys who would say, there's better career paths.
I've talked to 2, and you know, I didn't ask for the information; they just volunteered it to me. You know, and I'm like, you know, I never thought those were conversations that coaches would have to come to a perennial situation, which I think the SEC is.
Well, you look, these schools have contacted a lot of people over the years that haven't come. I mean, people say Florida always gets their man. No, they don't. They're as obsessed with Bob Stoops. And Spurrier already said, I've talked to him. This time around he's talked to him. They're obsessed with Bob Stoops. He's never come to the SEC. You've got Tennessee's made treks out to get guys in the past. Nope, they called Stoops. LSU went to Fisher, and nope. ACC is easier than the SEC, so I think that does play a role. We've gone a long time here. I want to let the spectacular crew go home and eat. Sterling Hinton, Will Overstreet, David Ligon, Daniel Hood, thank you guys very much. Thank you for watching. We will see you next Sunday at 11 on WATE 6 for the Sports Source.